Thank you.
Well, I am so glad to see that you agree with me, because as I mentioned earlier, when I saw this film, I thought it was such a moving story that addresses the Holocaust in a very respectable and moving way. Namely, it's invoked only verbally. You never show anything. It's just Bessie speaking to Eleanor, and then Eleanor channeling Bessie, basically. So, since this is your first feature as a director, could you tell us a little about the origin and why you decided that this would be right for you to move from from behind the camera? No, from in front.
Front to back.
Yeah. I get tongue-tied sometimes when I'm in the presence of someone I've never met and truly, truly admire.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And thank you all for such a wonderful welcome. Thank you very much. The script, I mean, I don't know where to start. I guess I would say that I thought when I was much younger that I would direct. And when I was a kid, actually, when I was 12, and I was working on The Horse Whisperer with Bob Redford, and I watched him have this incredible command of the set with Bob Richardson, our amazing DP, and Joe Reedy, legendary first AD, and they would block these complicated scenes, and then I would also he was acting in the film opposite me, or I was acting opposite him, I should say. But we would have these really beautiful rehearsals, before we started shooting each scene, and he would both, to act with him was so extraordinary, but also to be directed by him was so amazing. It was a transformative experience for me, and I thought, what an interesting job. Like, that's the good job, that you can do all of that stuff. And I thought I would act until I became an adult, and then I would direct. And then when I got to be in my early 20s, I became more interested in getting better at my job, I guess, as an actor, and understanding it on a deeper level. And that took me, that was that, and I did that for forever until now, I guess. But it was, sometimes there had been a few things that would come up that would be interesting. I thought, oh, maybe this could be something that I could envision directing, but not as clear as this script was. And I got the script from this woman, Celine Rattray, who has a producer at Maven.
Oh yeah, together with Trudy Styler, Celine Rattray, it's called Maven Pictures, and they have produced a lot of really excellent movies.
Yeah, they have great taste, and they're very, very insightful. And the script came from Celine. I had directed a short for New York, I Love You 20 years ago. And so she knew me in that context, which was different. And I guess I was just interested to know what June Squibb wanted to star in at this stage of her life and career. It came with a cover letter from her, and
So she was cast before you came on as director?
Yes, she was. She was actually Tori Kamen, who wrote the script, wrote it with her in mind, and she had been attached to it for about 4 or 5 years. And I mean, you can imagine, I mean, movies take forever to put together. This one, it's not, it was sort of a miracle that it kind of found me, and we found each other, really, because it's, it would take a very, even trying to finance the film and put it together, you need a very brave group of people to do it. And I read it, and I just was so taken with the originality of it. And there were many, many parts of it that really touched me. And I think most importantly, I could see a version of it that I thought would be worth pursuing.
I thought the script was incredibly savvy, Tori Kamen's script, and I couldn't really tell how much you were allowing actors to improvise. I mean, it almost seemed like June Squibb was coming up with these lines, but obviously they were scripted and directed. But I also wanted to ask you, I saw the credit for Erin Cressida Wilson. Mm-hmm. She's credited with additional literary material. Now, I remember that she wrote the script for Secretary, a very different treatment of female identity. It starred Maggie Gyllenhaal. What was her input?
Yeah, so Erin I'm just a huge fan of her writing, and she also wrote Fur, And I felt Tori's script was really solid. I felt it would benefit from having someone, a writer that had a little more life experience, to help help shape and color in, particularly the Lisa character and her relationship with Eleanor, and some other pieces that I felt needed a little bit more, I think I would just say life experience, that kind of thing. And Erin immediately loved the script, I think everybody that was attracted to the project, they had deep personal connection with the characters because it reminded them of their mom or their grandmother, or, they were the grieving, young woman, or they were a parent who, could relate to, the Chiwetel's character, Roger. I mean, everybody had, I think the theme of grief, it seemed to attract a lot of people to this project, and the depth with which it is explored in this.
Well, if this were merely a fine treatment of the theme of grief, I don't think it would have the response that you just heard. This is a comedy, among other things. It's a blend, obviously, what we call dramedy, perhaps. But was that one of the greater challenges for you, to balance the tone of grief and loss and the legacy of the Holocaust with what is essentially a very upbeat film with a central character who is nothing if not comical in her delivery?
I mean, it's funny. I mean, I found, when I'm editing it, I think it's hilarious. But of course, I'm happy that people found it funny too, because otherwise that would be not good. And I think also, I don't know, I find the balance, you have to have the balance. I love movies that are also very, very sad. But I think part of, my grandmother was Jewish, my mom is Jewish, I identify as Jewish, and I think to me that means also laughing through awful things too, and at awful things and the irony of life. You kind of find the hilarity in things because life is so fucking hard for everybody. And that sense of humor that I think came so much from my mom's side of the family, that's what this is too. It's both. You have to laugh because otherwise you cry, I guess.
Well, and supposedly resilience is one of the great traits of Jewish people, especially after the Holocaust. And there is a sense, especially in your last section of the film, there is forgiveness and there is transcendence and there is a kind of resilience of the human spirit that takes us to a better place than might have been the case at the beginning of the film. So yes, to all of that. Now, June Squibb, she's remarkable. I only became aware of her in Nebraska, Alexander Payne's film of 2013, in which she co-starred with Bruce Dern and actually received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. And I thought she was a non-actor. I thought she was somebody who had just appeared in this sort of Midwestern landscape. And then I learned, no, she's an actress, and she starred in Thelma a year or two ago. When did you first become aware of her, and what made you assume that she would be perfect as Eleanor?
I remember her from In and Out. And I think
she was in In and Out?
She was in In and Out.
The Paul Rudd script?
Yeah, with Kevin Kline.
I love that film. Now, I don't remember her in it.
Yeah, she was in, and that was the first time I think I saw her. So when I saw her in Nebraska, I was like, and she was also, she's been in films that you're like, oh, she's, she was in, I can't remember the Woody Allen movie that she did as well. was it Hannah and her sisters? I can't remember, but she's in it also in one of Woody's films too. That I like recognized her when I saw her in Nebraska from around, I guess. You know, I mean, she started working in film when she was in her 60s, because she was a theater actor forever. I mean, since she was 17, she was a dancer. She did musical theater forever. And then she was in the original production of Gypsy with Ethel Merman. So she's got some pretty good stories about that. Especially after a gin martini, she's got great stories. And yeah, that's when I. But Nebraska, I agree. I mean, she was so natural and hilarious in that. And June, as a person, she's from the Midwest as well, and she's much more polite. I mean, she's a broad, don't get me wrong, she is. But she's polite and considerate and, I mean, so different than how we think of her, I mean, in Eleanor as well, with that biting, salty, so, I mean, she's like impossible in that.
Yeah, I asked myself after seeing the film the first time, would I want to be in a room with her for a very long time? And I wasn't sure, because the way she treats Charlie, the poor pickles clerk at the very beginning, and even her own daughter, I liked it better when it was longer. She can hardly find a kind word for her daughter. And so initially, I'm a little distanced, but by the end of the film, there's a great deal of forgiveness. In terms of between the mother and daughter, Jessica Hecht's character and June Squibb, and also everyone else. Actually, we're not doing cards tonight. We're going to do live Q&A from the audience. So you don't have to walk around with the cards to fill out. Sorry, I would prefer for a live interaction than the written one.
Oh, I thought everybody had already written the cards. I was like, that's cruel, because they all wrote the card, but they were blank cards. That makes sense.
Not quite. So I would like to know a little bit more about Rita Zohar, who plays Bessie, because talk about authenticity of characterization, between her voice, her accent, her face. I almost had the impression that she was a real Holocaust survivor, but I think she's primarily an actress, Israeli and American. Could you tell us more about her?
Yes, so Rita, well, I wanted to go back because I wanted to say something about her relationship with her daughter, because she is really tough. Although I'm sort of like, anyway, that relationship, I'm not saying that I had this with my mom necessarily, but I also get it too. That relationship is familiar to me, and anybody, if someone has, because when I was cutting the film and, different people, producers in the studio, you get all these notes, you get a lot of notes, many, many notes. And some of them are great and some of them are crazy. But some really crazy ones. But one of the things was it's hard to see her be this way with her daughter. She's really it's really disagreeable. She's really harsh. But I also was like, yeah, I guess she is. But people have their stuff, right? And you can't try to what's the purpose of making her kinder to her daughter, because she isn't, and we don't know what it is. And actually June and I talked about it a lot, and we talked about Eleanor, and we thought, I think Eleanor could maybe just never wanted children, that she had another life planned for herself, but because of the fact that she was a woman and whatever conventional rules of society at that time, and what else would she do? And she was in the stenography pool, and then you get married and you have kids and you make a home and your husband works and XYZ, and it's maybe she loves musical theater, maybe she wanted to be an actress, maybe she wanted to be a singer or a performer or an entertainer, and then she was like, I'm doing this. And I think people can be resentful of the fact that and then take it out on the person that that they love and is a target for that kind of thing. And I think it's anyway.
Oh,
That went probably way deeper than.
No, but I appreciate the backstory possibility that you're providing because I understand it, and it also helps me accept the scene of the daughter coming into the congregation and yelling, "You're not a Holocaust survivor," in front of everyone else. I mean, to be blunt, at that moment when I saw the scene the first time, I thought, what Lisa is doing is worse than Eleanor claiming to be a Holocaust survivor. It grabbed me and hurt me. But by the end of the film, I had come around to, you hurt each other intergenerationally, but you also can forgive and perhaps move on.
Yeah, I agree. I think the relationship is complicated, and I'm glad of that because it's kind of life, I guess, like it's many things at the same time. And if it was just a worried daughter that her mother was, was suffering of dementia, and we have to, put her, in a memory care facility, like immediate or whatever it was, like that to me is less interesting than the dynamic that they have that's complicated.
Yeah, it's thorny, but ultimately it is rewarding and redemptive, if you want to say. So I was asking about Bessie, who is on screen not quite long enough, but who I fell in love with that character.
Yeah.
Tell us about Ruth Zohar.
Yeah, Rita Zohar. So
Rita.
Rita. Mm-hmm. So she, we had a legendary, most amazing casting director, like dream casting director, Ellen Lewis, who is the best. She cast every movie you love the cast of. She's so amazing. She does all of Scorsese's movies, and I've known her since I was like a kid, actually, which is funny. But all the casting directors in New York I've known since I was a kid, crazily enough. But she, when I was looking for a Bessie, I actually didn't know that there was such a talented pool of female actors in their 90s in New York, which there are many more than I could ever have imagined. It was great to read all these women, and Rita was one of them. She lives in LA, so she did a taping, and she was just so great. I mean, I was like, oh my God, she's just in it. It's deep, lives deep within her. And she's a very, she's accomplished actress, Israeli actress, and she was born in a concentration camp, which was such a other thing. I mean, it was like, oh, and also this. Like, of course, she was so sensational. I have to read this woman, and I would love to do more work with her. And then that fact. So it really did live so deeply inside her. And it was all of the choices that she made, the way she looked, what she wanted to wear, how she kept her hair, how she was deferential to Eleanor's sort of power in ways. And, she speaks Yiddish, which is wonderful. My grandmother also spoke Yiddish, and she lives in it, so she has Israeli, she has an Israeli accent, but she sounds, Eastern European because she is. And it just, she just was such an amazing gift.
Yeah.
So great. I mean, that last monologue is like, it kills me. It's so incredible. I mean, just watching her do it was extraordinary. She has such dramatic stamina too, which was amazing. Both of those women, their dramatic stamina was just extraordinary.
Now, you mentioned this monologue, and Bessie has a few. How much rehearsal was involved, and how many takes? Because I'm curious, there's such a power in especially Bessie's stories. Was this something that you had many takes for, much rehearsal for, or was it more an immediate, intuitive thing?
We actually didn't have rehearsal for that. I didn't think it was necessary. And, Bessie's story actually was, we very, very fortunately early on in production reached out to the Shoah Foundation and sent them the script, and was hoping they would like it, and they loved it. And they also helped us with developing Bessie's story, which was immensely helpful. And so we talked about what could have been. you know, how people, I mean, it's crazy to talk about in these terms, but like really like how people were moved, like how people were separated, what could be plausible for a young girl and her brother, you know, all of that. You know, would she end up at Auschwitz? She has this tattoo. So it was like, we have to, and not really, that was, you know, I didn't realize that actually that was not a very common thing. To be tattooed that way. It's really specific to Auschwitz and maybe Dachau or another one of the camps, but it wasn't everybody that had that. And so it was written in the script, and so we had to kind of work backwards to understand what could be a plausible story for her. And so she was also involved in the forming of that story. And so I guess in a sense, you know, not that there was rehearsal necessarily, but it was, you know, it was heavily discussed. And so the story was living inside her for a long time before we shot it. And, you know, obviously she was completely, I mean, it was a lot. We shot that whole kitchen, we shot in a day. So we had a day for it, which was enough time. But it was a hell of a lot of work. It was so much work for both of those actors, but certainly for Rita. And I think the biggest challenge of it dramatically was understanding where it needed to go. So like there was a couple of challenges. One was the actual cinematic transition of like, how is this going? Flashbacks are hard. They're hard, I mean, when I read scripts to act in or produce or whatever, and there's like relying on a flashback, it's tough. It's just, you don't, when you're reading it, you think, oh yeah, okay, a flashback. But when you imagine the visual representation of what is a flashback and how do you get in and out of it, it's much more challenging than you think it is. If you watch movies that have flashbacks in them, it's a notable thing. Oftentimes there's like a bump before you, and so you kind of go, okay, it's a flashback and whatever, and you sort of, but it's not always the prettiest thing. And so that was one part of it, was how to actually, and Hélène Louvard, who shot the film, who's an amazing, extraordinary
Hélène Louvard.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's a French cinematographer who's done remarkable work, right?
Yes, she's so great. I mean, the last thing that I had seen of her was, I think was The Lost Daughter, or she did sometimes, rarely, always, never. I can never remember all of it. Never, always, rarely, sometimes. That French film, that was so great. But anyway, so part of it was figuring out how to light it, the transition of what it would be, and then also dramatically how Rita, where she needed to start and get to, because it had to fit into what was surrounding it. And I think for Rita, she came in like guns blazing, you know, right away. And I was like, oh no, like, this is a lot, because she's giving everything. She's so in it. How do you like pull back from this? Because we have to have some place to go with it. But of course, she's an actor, so, and a great one. And so you just...
But also you made what I think is an excellent choice. When we first see Eleanor in the support group and she opens her mouth to speak and tells Bessie's story, that's when you go back and it's Bessie who tells the story. I think this would have been a less accomplished film if we heard Eleanor voicing Bessie's story, which we never do. She invokes Bessie, and that's who we see telling those words. And when we go back after the monologue of Bessie, it's Eleanor sitting in the support group. So I think there's a cinematic language choice that you made vis-a-vis the flashback, so that we never hear the lie. We don't hear Eleanor saying, when I was with my brother, you know, because that would cheapen it.
Yeah, it would be impossible, actually. And there was that. It was something that early on in the early drafts of the script, you know, that was in there, but it was like, we can never, I couldn't imagine it. It seemed like it would be impossible. And And so it was a choice. But it was, those days were, I mean, I was so blown away by how amazing Rita was, how it was so easy to take notes, not open to, so just deep in the work. It was such an extraordinary pleasure. I just loved it.
Now, did you cast actual Holocaust survivors, for example, in the support group?
Yes, everybody in the support group is a Holocaust survivor, yeah.
Wow. And you were able to identify them primarily through the USC Shoah Foundation or your casting director?
It was actually it was a collective effort. Jessica Hecht, who's very involved in the Jewish community here in New York, had a couple of leads. It was also understanding who could participate, who wanted to participate, who was able to participate. So she had a couple of leads. Rodef Shalom, where we shot, they had a couple of leads. The Shoah Foundation too. And fortunately, it's a larger group of people that live here in New York, survivors. So it was a little easier to identify people, but it was so amazing to have everyone together. Because I think mostly no one knew one another, even though a lot of them are advocates and, have different organizations, that are related. So it was amazing.
And despite the fact that the title is appropriately Eleanor the Great, I really see this film as not just about her. It's the story of at least two families. Because once you bring in Nina's character and her own grieving and loss, after having given us that beautiful opening sequence where we feel the sweetness of friendship between Bessie and Eleanor, and how delicately you suggest that Bessie has died by showing Eleanor alone on the bench where previously they were together. That to me is the sign of a director. I mean, I knew that I was in the hands of someone I could trust, narratively speaking, and then you had me, pretty much for the rest. But the story of Nina and the tension with her own father, which is in some ways even more poignant than Eleanor and her daughter, and grandson. And I remember when we saw this film the first time, my husband, Mark, who's sitting there, he's an actor who's very perceptive. He says, no, there are three families in this story. He said, when Bessie's family is invoked by the fake story, let's say, okay, but when we hear it, Bessie's family comes alive again. She lamented that nobody would ever know about her brother. She would go to the grave with that. And thanks to the deception of Eleanor, Bessie's family exists too. Did you see that the connection among stories as opposed to a focus on Eleanor?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even more so, of course, it was one thing in my mind, but then when you have the actors bringing all of it to life and you're with Rita and you see her brother, you see her mom, holding her so tight, and she becomes a little girl again, it just is so, sorry, it makes me so emotional, but she's so, it was alive in her. I mean, I could never have seen that on the page exactly. It's not till the actor brings it to life, that's the magic. And the same thing with Chiwetel and Erin, who plays Nina, and it's such an extraordinary young actor. And the depth of, this little nuanced pieces of, one of my favorite moments of Chiwetel, it's such a small moment, but after the deception is revealed and he comes in and he's trying to console her, but he's saying nothing, she doesn't want to hear any of that. And he says, I'm going to order food, and she kind of says, I'm fine. And he has this little hesitation at the door. And it was like, it was so moving, because this is a man who can't express what he's so removed from what he's feeling and not able to communicate, and there's such a missed opportunity between them in that moment. And then you get the family deepens then too. It's all these little, he could have played that off and just been dismissive, but he's with her then, and you think this is a family that's in deep grief. And yeah. I think just the actors make it so much more, layered than I could ever have imagined it.
Yeah.
You know?
Erin Kellerman, is that the name of Nina's? This actress I had never seen or heard of before, but I thought she held her own so beautifully in every interchange with Eleanor. And ultimately, I have to forgive Eleanor because her presence in the life of Nina and Roger is cathartic. Were it not for Eleanor, would they have been able to bond and finally articulate their pain and their connection? I don't know. Now, I was wondering if you had actually watched any particular films to prepare for this, not necessarily Holocaust related, but in terms of directing a 90-year-old actor, or in terms of a tonal balance. I mean, were there any particular ones?
I mean, there's movies that I love that this script reminded me of, that are movies I've seen like a million times, like Crossing Delancey, Living Out Loud, you know, movies that are very New York-centric, but real character-driven films from that period of time. But no, I didn't watch anything in preparation. I think those movies are just a part of my DNA now, because I've seen them like, you know, 400 times.
Well, good, because guess what? You're sitting at the 92nd Street Y, which is where New Yorkers come for the best in everything related to culture. And I could feel the New York, I mean, yes, you fudged a little, because I happen to know the JCC on Amsterdam Avenue and 75th Street personally, and you created a marquee, or what do you call it, something on top.
Yeah, balance or whatever.
Yeah, and I think you were using like East 67th Street or something. I've been on that block and I recognize the building.
Oh, you're that person.
I am truly a New Yorker and I walk everywhere. But the other moments that are quintessentially New York, and when she says, Eleanor arrives, you're living in the middle of the FDR Drive, you know, I knew where I was. And am I right that you shot most of the film here in the city?
Yeah, we shot all the film was shot here. We got one day that we squeezed out of our budget so that we could shoot the Florida part in LA, actually, for a couple of days. I think
in LA?
One day, I think it was, yeah, in LA. Yeah, it was like we looked into doing it in Florida, and it was somehow like impossible. I don't know why. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, we shot everything in New York. I was nervous about shooting here because I have shot here a couple of times, and it's hard. It's very hard to shoot here, mostly because I think it's just, you get a lot of like disruption and crowds and traffic and paparazzi and like it's just crowds of people. It's very tough to work outside here for those reasons. But actually, weirdly, I don't know, the like cinema gods, the Made in New York, whatever gods were on our side. And we basically went, you know, without any hassle for the entirety of the production, which was great because we had other challenges. You know, June was 94. Now she's gonna be 96 in November. But she, you know, she has mobility issues, and there were things to consider. It was cold, very cold, you know, and that was important. But of course, it's tough. So, you know, I'm glad we didn't have any hassle. I mean, more than glad. I was so grateful because it was fun to shoot in New York. I loved it. The crew was fantastic. We had a great New York-based crew. And, you know, of course, you could always order a bacon, egg, and cheese, which is great. At any moment you were feeling particularly stressed out.
How many days was your shoot?
I thought you were going to say, how many bacon, egg, and cheese?
No.
I'm like, that's not a
not
nice
my
question.
dish.
We shot, I think it was like 28 days. Yeah. We had that extra day we squeezed out in California.
Okay. Now, I did my homework about some of the directors you've worked with. I mean, the variety of talented directors include Sofia Coppola and Woody Allen, Noah Baumbach, Wes Anderson, Taika Waititi, the Coen brothers, Cameron Crowe, Shari Springer Berman, and Bob Pulcini. alumni of Columbia's MFA film program, I say proudly, Christopher Nolan, and of course, Robert Redford. So what I was curious about, from which of these and other directors did you learn most about directing? In other words, that you were able to transfer from the experience of being an actor into the directing?
I mean, I guess it's weird, strangely, even some that were really tough, and you know, you're like, oh, no one likes this. No one likes this way of behaving. You know, it's both how to really, more than anything, it's you take like what the environment on the set is you know, how you want the environment on the set to be. That's the most important thing, in my opinion, is that the environment on the set is respectful and enjoyable and lighthearted when it you know, at a resting state is lighthearted, because you know you want people to be locked in when you need them to be. And people will do that for you if they feel like they can be themselves, like they are, you know, being respected and appreciated and a part of something. That is also the director's job, to create that environment. And also in the choices that you make, you know, it's like throwing a dinner party, you know, in a way, a dinner party with 150 people. But, you know, it's important, all of those things. And it helps the actors do their best work too, because they feel they're walking onto a set and everybody's like joined together to create an environment for them to, you know, be vulnerable and explore. And, you know, I think I don't know, I was nervous about how to talk to the actors, because I have never done it in this capacity. And my producing partner, Jonathan Leah, got me a book called Directing Actors, which was hilarious. Not the book it seemed great, but it was like, that's cute, you know? Because, you know, I flipped through it, I was like, oh, this is such a funny, I guess people read this and they implement it, and and I've probably worked with those people too, and they were probably great. But you realize, like, oh yeah, I'm speaking the same vocabulary as, I don't need to, you realize how directors that are not actors spend a lot of time trying to understand how to talk to actors. But I was like, oh, I know how to do that, because I do it all the time. And so that part was less of a concern.
Right. Well, I'm even remembering that you've been in films of actors turned directors, obviously Robert Redford, but I'm thinking of Don John, which was the directorial debut of this wonderful actor, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays Roger, he became a director too. In fact, he was a guest on this stage with us with The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. That was his first feature as a director, and he also acted in it. Were you aware of other or close to other actors who had become directors as well?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of actors that were directors that are actors. I just worked with Kristen Scott Thomas. I worked with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Jon Favreau.
Iron Man, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we did Chef together. Even Joe Russo, who directs all the Avengers movies, you know, he was an actor too. And Wes is weirdly a great actor, but he probably doesn't, I don't know if anybody knows that, but he's better than all of us. Yeah, so that, you know, and sometimes those movies are great and sometimes they're not, but that's true of any director, yeah.
Of course. Now, I was curious about whether making this film gave you a greater sense of your own Jewish identity. Because I remember in 2017, you appeared on Skip Gates' Finding Your Roots. And he presented to you this amazing genealogical history where your great-grandfather on your mother's side had family who ended up perishing in the Holocaust. And obviously, you've mentioned that your own grandmother, I looked it up, Dorothy Sloan, was someone very close to you, including a Jewish strain. So I'm just curious, did this film enhance it? Do you feel, dare I ask, more Jewish now? Or are you more, proud to be associated with the tradition?
That's a good question. It's funny. I didn't think about it as much while I was making it because, I grew up with, as the culture of Judaism, and my grandmother was she was a very she was like a sort of bohemian type of person. She was very independent and artistic minded, and she was fiercely independent, and she just, I don't know, I would just, that her, I never thought of her, her being Jewish, of course, was a characteristic, a fundamental characteristic of who she was, and so of my mom, and so of me, and so I don't know, I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay.
Did I feel more Jewish? I don't know. Maybe a little less.
The way you just posed that was very Jewish. Okay. Before we take questions from the audience, I have to make a confession. One of my favorite shots in the film is Bar Mitzvah Girl, when we first see her with the braces and the lipstick and the eyeshadow. Well, first of all, did you have a bat mitzvah yourself?
No.
So this was, I thought maybe.
This was mine.
But some of your choices of extreme close-ups, for example, was that something that you developed? Was it partly in the script? But that one in particular just made me laugh.
Yeah, I guess that's just my, kind of visual, interest. Is this thing, this big thing, giant. Although when I saw it in Cannes, it was huge. I was like, whoa, these are some pretty extreme close-ups.
Yeah. Did you wear braces?
Did I wear braces?
Yeah, because that was.
No, I actually never did. I never did wear braces, actually.
Because it was the shot, the way it was composed, because you have the braces and the lipstick and the eyeshadow, and the the Torah, Haftorah reading. That was just brilliant.
That girl was so great. She had such a great voice, and she was so excited. She had just been bat mitzvahed like a couple of months before, so she was pumped, and she loved her whole outfit and the makeup and everything. She's so cute.
Yeah,
and you can see it. It's like she was really proud of herself.
Yeah, it worked. Now, did the experience of making Eleanor the Great give you enough gratification that you hope to or plan to direct more films?
Yeah, it was so wonderful all the way through. I really loved every part of it. I loved it, and I would love to have the opportunity to do it again. It made me understand that you have to direct something that you love, because it's so hard. And hard in the sense that like it lives inside you and it's all you care about. With the exception of your family and whatever, but it takes over your entire brain from the moment that you commit to it, as you try to scramble to find financing for it and falls apart 1,000 times, and you try to keep your actors alive, and then it's like, oh, you lose this window, and so your favorite production designer can't do it, or your favorite other person can't do it, and then you try to keep everybody on the line so they will get to the finish of just getting to the first day of production or pre-production. And it's all the way through. So it really, it cemented to me that even if a movie is bad, it's just as hard to make it.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons that I've never written a negative review of a film, and I never show films in my classes at Columbia that show something badly done, because they work just as hard to get those not successful films as one. Better to just ignore them and forget them and concentrate on something like what you've done. I have one more question, though, because I remember when you were also a theater actor here in New York back in 2010, A View from the Bridge, directed by my then Columbia colleague, Greg Mosher. You received a Tony Award for Best Featured Actress in a Play. And then you did Maggie in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. But lately, because you're so in demand with films, you haven't done much with the stage. Is that something you want to go back to?
Yeah, it's actually because I have young children. I would love to do a play. I would love to. I mean, the experience of it is hard. It's so hard. It's just, it's so amazingly fulfilling and terrible. Kind of at the same time, weirdly. It's just impossible, but you do this impossible thing. I mean, it's like nothing else. It's so invigorating and exhausting. And with young kids, it's hard because you miss all the stuff, you know? And so I've had to, I keep kind of dabbling in committing to something, and then I think, but I'll miss all the bath time and all the, you know, stories, and then in the morning drop off, and I'll be like half a person. And I don't know. A good friend of mine, Kieran Culkin, was just in a play here, and he has young children too, and he said, I just never could have imagined how it's just all you think about is the play. Like it's all, you only want to be there all the time. And it's so hard when you have children that you're, you know, in love with, because it's like choosing between, you can't, you know, you just can't.
Yeah. He was actually on this stage a few months back when Jesse Eisenberg and he came with Real Pain. And he was a delightful guest on this stage. And he was just about to do Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling the presence of him right here. I have more questions, but we have just enough time for a few from the audience. If we could just raise the lights so that at least I can see your hands and faces. And yes, I see a gentleman right there. Okay, I am the son of one of the survivors in the film. And I thank you for the care that you showed in wanting to cast real survivors.
What's your dad's name? Oh, yeah, that's Fred. Oh, Fred.
He refers to Scarlett as his girlfriend now.
I accept.
Okay, I see on the right-hand side two, or actually three hands, but I'll start with the woman on the right, on the aisle.
Congratulations on such a beautiful film. I'm an aspiring actor in New York, and I was just curious what you think is the greatest similarity between acting and directing. What was the most exciting similarity that you found?
I'm an aspiring actress in New York. What have you found to be the greatest similarity between acting and directing?
The greatest similarity. Oh, that's interesting. Well, it's hard. I think every actor works differently, so I can only speak for myself. But to me, acting is such a part of it. You rely on the entire community of the production to see what you're doing and understand it, and even sometimes, you know, be able to, you know, see it before you see it, even in a way. And I think directing too is similar in a sense, where you kind of need a group. You need the group to also sort of not only see what you're trying to achieve, but then also kind of forecast what may be ahead. And I think the community of acting and production, whether it's stage or for film or television, it's all, part of the fabric of the same thing. It's all, you're working towards this impossible thing, the magic that everyone is trying to capture. And I think performance is part of that too, for me anyway. Some actors like to work very solo, and that's cool too. Whatever works, but for me it's very much all part of the same thing. It's like an organism,
There were a few, we're going to come right back to the left side in a moment. I had called on two other people right behind you on the aisle, the far wall.
I feel like I'm winning. I love movies and I love you, so I just wanted to ask, if you could discuss further, why you landed on the title Eleanor the Great, and if there's anything behind that, or if it's just because she's so great.
The title Eleanor the Great.
Well, actually, the script was originally titled Eleanor Invisible, but that seemed not right. And I don't know, I felt I think after working with June and watching what she was creating and watching how Ellen, our DP, was capturing her, and just the way that the entire crew upheld June and supported her and all loved this character so much, it felt there was something regal about it, about her, even in her impossibility. And I think what she does is extraordinary and brave. And because she admits something that's, really, she admits her wrongdoing, and she also honors the love that she has for her friend and the urgency she feels, with which the story is, is told, and the importance of it, and that felt really, it felt extraordinary to me.
Okay, there was a gentleman here.
First of all, congratulations on the film. It was terrific. I'm just curious. If you were Lisa and Eleanor was your mom, would you have outed her in front of that congregation?
If you were Lisa and Eleanor were your mom, would you have outed her in that congregation?
I don't know. I think probably because it felt, I don't know, it's hard to say. I don't know. Not them. But I can understand why Lisa does it, because I think she actually does it, I think she's really talking to her mom and everyone is there, but it felt almost like, it feels so like it kind of just comes out of her, you know what I mean? It's not like this thing she planned and she watched the whole thing from the back and was like, I'm gonna, screw over this woman. It feels like she's so shocked. Can you imagine? That would be shocking. To find your mom in this. She would never expect this at all. It is crazy, what she discovers. And so I think it's just sort of she feels she has to almost explain the situation to everybody that's there, because also a woman that's speaking on the stage is an actual Holocaust survivor, and there's a group of people. She understands that because she hears Vera saying it, and so it's oh wait, my mom's not the person you think. I think it comes out of shock.
Okay, gentleman here.
I was curious, you mentioned June came with the script, but I was wondering about the casting, particularly Nina and Bessie. How did you pick? Because I feel the chemistry between them and Eleanor is so important emotionally for the film to work.
Question is, June Squibb came with the script, but talk a little bit more about the casting of the Nina character and the Bessie character because of the intimacy, the authenticity that you felt with them in their scenes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say that the first person, I think I'm trying to think if I first cast, I may have cast Chiwetel actually first. because I knew I needed an actor that had he had to be somebody that had a presence that was, okay, this is we wanted somebody that was obviously he's an incredible actor, and also someone that was familiar and could carry the presence of, this newscaster and, kind of local hero. And so when I was looking at actors for Nina, I was like, okay, well, I have Chiwetel, so I can now, this is like a weird kind of chemistry that you do when you're, or not even chemistry, it's like adding up all the pieces when you're trying to cast something is like, okay, I have somebody, with the gravitas of Chiwetel, now I can cast an unknown person. I don't have to look for somebody that, is a name for the Erin character, a Nina character. And so actually Ellen, I said, I would love to see all up and coming, I'd love to discover somebody or somebody who's starting out. And Ellen Lewis, who our casting director, had put Erin forth for a lot of things. She loved her, and Ellen has amazing taste. And actually, Erin is not, she's from like Yorkshire or something. She's from England.
Wow.
Which is incredible. She has.
I'm so shocked, I'm sorry.
I know. Her accent is so thick that at times you're like, wait, what? Come again? But she has an amazing American accent. And she, from just reading her, I was like, this woman is so beautiful. I mean, she was just so beautiful. Her face is so beautiful looking and pure and vulnerable and natural. She has like so many elements of actors that I like love and look for, watching movies. She's just incredible face and purity about her performance. And such compassion for her because she really lived in, she's just herself and comfortable just being herself. And it was an immediate, we have to cast her. She's just an amazing discovery.
Agreed. No, I see too many hands for us to, all right, there's right here, gentlemen. I'm coming back to the right-hand side where I abandoned a few of you that had hands up. Go right ahead.
First of all, I love the movie also. But we live in a time of a lot of people questioning the legitimacy of Holocaust history, a lot of legitimacy of October 7th, a lot of legitimacy of Jewish history. And one of the things I think the film didn't do to some degree is ensure our legacy of our own legitimacy. And I'm a little concerned that some people might misinterpret some of the actions that happen because there are people that question who's a survivor, who's legitimate, who's telling the right story. You did a great job in the movie's fabulous, but there is a situation going on today where people are attacking us, and what I'm nervous about is that people might use the film or use issues of the film in a negative way. That's the only point, and I'm seriously worried about it.
I'm going to try to compress this so that everybody hears. No, it's quite all right. First of all, fantastic film that raises the question of who gets to be called a survivor, who has the right to use that term. And a worry being expressed that these days, with questions being raised about the legitimacy of Jewish history, Holocaust, identity, is there not a possible fear that the film could be misused or misinterpreted within the context of the current moment?
Yeah, and I think that's something that, look, my job as the director of the film is to approach the characters without judgment. And, I think it's also the actor's job too, but certainly the director's job. And, my hope is that at the end of the film, hopefully, the audience has compassion and empathy for Eleanor's loss, deep grief, and also her, though it's misguided, again, the urgency that she feels, and the importance that she feels of letting her friend's story be known. And, it's not the way that it's messy, it's complicated, but certainly I think the hope is that with the group giving her giving her approval to, go on, we want to know of your friend, Bessie, and let her story live on, so as it's told to us. That is important, I think. It's an important, it's to me an important differentiation between a fabricated story that is a made-up story of a survivor, and one that actually is genuine of her friend and just told in a way that it comes out, it's a misguided decision, but the intention is pure, I think.
And I would remind everybody, it's called Eleanor the Great, and it is a fiction film. It is not based on a true story as far as I know.
Right.
And it exists within its own terms, which end with the truth will out. And I think that's the strength of the film, that by the end, the deception has been revealed and everyone has accepted the deception as a stepping stone to a more honest reality. Okay, I promised I'd go back to the right-hand side, except that now we only have about 2 minutes left. So there are two people who had hands up, and I don't remember which one went up first. So it's the two women sitting next to each other.
Ms. Johansson, if you could impart one piece of advice to young women who are looking to one day work in the film industry, specifically working behind camera, what would that be?
If you could offer one piece of advice to young women who wish to work within the industry, maybe as directors, what would that be?
I would say any opportunity that any person has to to work on set and actually put in hours, understanding how everybody does their job, that is really helpful. And it's also helpful in identifying what you want to do within the context of a production. I mean, I've worked with all crews that have, where your first AD did everybody else's job. It was like I was a PA, then I was in the, then I was in the camera department, and then I decided I wanted to assist, and that's how I've been, a first assistant director for 30 years or whatever. I mean, some people come up, discover what they want to do just by being in the environment. So I would say, become a PA, intern in a production office, and you learn a lot just being around people that have been doing it and doing all different jobs within the production. I mean, it's not the most glamorous thing to be intern on a film set, but it's fun. You learn a lot.
Now, unfortunately, we've gone past the hour, and much as I would love to take more questions. So just two things, wait. A reminder that this film opens tomorrow. So if you appreciated it, please share that awareness with your friends and neighbors. And thank you to Scarlett Johansson for joining us. Thank you.